Hello and welcome back. Looks like I'm off to the races right here we go with this stream. Looks like OBS has supplied an update where once I hit start in OBS, it just starts it on YouTube as well. So it's kind of a little bit different. But today's topic, and if you're new here, this is a 15-minute segment where I just pick a topic. I pick a topic and I talk about it for 15 minutes. Just kind of trying to hone my audio only broadcaster skills, and this is harder than you'd think, but I'm going to start the timer. The topic is playing in a band. Timer is going. Here we go. So as I think of things to talk about, there's different topics that I've come up with, but this one is really easy, and I almost didn't want to do this topic because my channel is really about music all the time. Hold on one second. Just trying to plug in my phone actually, and then also just make sure I'm still streaming here. But yeah, playing in a band. So I've played in 2 bands, and I also played in a 2-person group, which I will clarify as not a band, but I'll also give you some info. So I played in the 2-person group. It was kind of like a project where when we first started writing the music, the 2 of us, we made a decision to work on an album, and we kind of visualized what the album would look like and how many songs there would be and what it would sound like and everything. And then over the course of 2 years, we ended up performing songs that were recorded and created, by both of us being multi-instrumentalists and piecing together the music into recordings that we couldn't reproduce as 2 people live. So instead, we just basically arranged the music into, drums and keyboards only. And I think we performed live. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, probably about 5 times, I'd say, with varying degrees of success. In fact, one of the shows might go down as the worst live performance I've been a part of due to technical issues and also just being unprepared. But so 5 shows, a CD with music on it, not counting that as a band, 2 people. However, if you look at Black Keys, it's 2 people, but it kind of is a band. I don't know. I think there's varying different levels of what you do and how you go about it that kind of determine band status, whether or not it becomes legit. And that's actually a good thought to kind of start this 15-minute discussion, which is playing in a band to me. And I'm going to make an insight that I've been thinking about, just kind of thought about the other day. But it's very much a philosophical pursuit. Oh, and I can talk about this other thing too. Give me one second here. So instead of just giving you the history of my, roles in the 2 different bands I've been in, I want to bring attention back to a Facebook post from, I think it must have been 2012, where this guy from the music scene who had been a guitarist in a band before and then switched to being a electronic music guy. So he was playing guitar in a band. He was like a songwriter and a guitarist. And then he started making EDM, for lack of a better term, using Ableton, live improvised trip hop or whatever. I don't even know how you genreify it exactly, but basically just spliced up house music into jams or whatever. I don't know. And he made a post on Facebook where he made the bold claim that every single band is what he termed as a vanity project. So if you're unfamiliar with what that means, it basically means that the purpose of every band is only to self fulfill the members of the band and make them look good in the eyes of others. So, this similar way to like, and I've used this term before, puff piece. So, if I just write an article about, Taylor Swift is, there's tons of puff pieces about her, and there's full blown magazines that are entire puff magazines where it's just like all about Taylor Swift. And it serves no purpose other than to basically just like publicize her. So the claim in the Facebook post from this guy was that bands are all vanity projects. And it was an interesting post because it's like something wild to say when, and this guy particularly, actually, you know what? I've played music with him live, I believe once, maybe more than once. Music I've written as part of a, I guess, 4-piece. And I've also been a fan of his prior, like after he quit playing guitar and vocals, he like made like a, and before the trip hop Ableton stuff, he made like a music that sounded like the Postal Service, if anyone's ever listened to them. And I was a fan of it, still am today actually. So it was kind of shocking to read that on Facebook. And then back in these days, I would reply to stuff here and there. So I replied and with some pushback on my own thoughts, which were basically just like, I'm going to have to disagree with that because personally, and this is true, I've never gotten into a band just to make myself look good. That seems like a fucking crazy thought. It's always been about making the best music possible in order to, like, I don't know, express yourself in a way that, like, you feel like only you can and want to do in order to, like, make something that doesn't exist yet and bring it into reality in a way that's going to, hone your craft and, like, make the best artistic expression you possibly can. That's actually how I feel. So that's always the stance I've taken when joining a band. But anything that kind of cuts deep like that, it does make you think. And then I believe that, what's crazy too is that there's people out there who join bands for reasons other than what I've just described, like other than what I think. And there are people out there who are quote unquote mercenaries who aren't really in it for the art or the music or the compositions, but they're in it to use it as like a tool for them to kind of, I guess, gain social equity, which is to me crazy. Considering girls as part of like a byproduct of playing in a band, I guess you can call them groupies as the classic term, has never been a motivating factor for me whatsoever. It's just like a byproduct of what goes on. And by the way, the groupies are, for every, like, I don't know, they're not that great. I mean, once in a while, some of them are pretty good though. But it's never like I'm going to create this band just so there's groupies. That's crazy. But I guess there's people out there that do it. And, way early on when you don't know any better, you're kind of just like operating like fake it till you make it. But it's like, I don't know. I think that's allowed when you're below like 18 years old maybe. But after that, if you're still, and that's why this is another part of this topic. Like everyone has an experience playing in a band. Not everyone, but a lot of people do. When you're in as early as like 6th, 7th, 8th grade, even 9th grade, and you and your buddies in the garage form a band, and there are valuable aspects to that experience. But like I just described, like once you hit, I guess like 18 and up, 20 and up, if you're still pursuing playing in a band, the pool gets smaller and smaller. At least back then it did. I guess kids these days, with the dawn of laptops and smartphones and everything, kids these days have a different, I guess they do different shit, but playing in a band was king for a while. Or like, king of the hobbies for young people. What was I saying? Yeah, if you're still doing it, then you really do have to figure out why you are still motivated in that way. So that's why the whole vanity project thing to me was crazy, and I had to push back on that. But I think more that idea does apply to solo work though, because like, and this is another part of it that I can get into with writing music. I would say up until I was pretty old, I started trying to write music when I was like 20, and for a while I really couldn't do it because I had to teach myself from scratch. So I would have to use systems or put systems in place in order to like attempt to create music, and then I would use those systems to like hopefully be able to piece something together that would make cohesive sense in the end. But I wasn't sure that I was like, I didn't really know what I was doing, so I was never really sure of like if my composition would be useful or not. Obviously at this point in time I've practiced enough where I like broke through some sort of threshold where I can just like, fluently kind of compose what I want more or less. But there was a time where like I was basically just like what's that expression? Grasping at straws in order to like write music. So that's another aspect of it. But and I can just keep going for hours, but we're gonna keep it to 15 minutes. But there's two things I want to say. So as you keep going and as you get older, a lot of people out there may not understand this, but playing in a band becomes extremely serious at one point. And I think I figured out the reason why. But before I get into that reason, one of the best quotes I've heard about playing like loud rock music, and the thumbnail here is a picture of the first ever Guns N' Roses show. Something I didn't realize until it was articulated this way. And this is the guy from Meat Puppets who said this. I think it's Kurt Kirkwood. He said that when you play in a rock band, it's super loud. And the loud music makes people go crazy, which is true if you've been to a rock show. So people go crazy. They start screaming, jumping up and down and everything. And then after it's all over, there's a crazy amount of like potential energy in the air to where you feel like all of a sudden you're just up for anything because you're so like juiced. And that's true of loud rock music. And it's like a high, and it's like a drug that you can't replicate. And I think that's true where it's like super loud, people go crazy. It makes you do things that you wouldn't normally do otherwise. So it's like, that's why the whole lifestyle of the rock and roller is like stereotypically like out of control. Not only stereotypically, but in reality, you start doing things that are way riskier, and you're just like, because the loud sounds make you go crazy. And now I'm going to get to my insight that I've come up with and why playing in a band becomes so serious, as opposed to, and why bands break up. I could go on for an hour about this, but as opposed to something like playing on a sports team, playing in a band, what it comes down to is like, and this is a kind of like new agey, but it's true. It's like vibrations and energy. So like, you walk into somewhere and you're like, whoa, the vibe is way bad in here. You get that intuition, that gut feeling. Same way when you're playing music with people. All it really is, the instrument is there so you can articulate how you're feeling inside and express that through the instrument, which is just, frequencies and vibrations. Then when you amplify it, you're really getting a better feel of everything, and you're getting like additional like adrenaline and juiced up. So you're vibrating with other people in a way where you're expressing, everything that you're feeling and your whole like soul basically. So once you start doing that with other people, the bond between you and them strengthens, And then it does turn very serious because how could it not be? You're literally doing like the most personal thing you can with someone else, you know, basically aside from like having sex with them. So it's the vibrations, man. And that's why it becomes so serious, where it's like high risk and also like, I don't want to say like, well, it's just like ego that comes into play and everything. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot to say about playing in a band. And looks like that's the 15 minutes. I could keep going, and this live stream as well as the last one, I kind of had more to say than the 15 minutes allowed for, but that's okay. I'll just try to wrap up right now. I'm going to take a sip of this coffee. As I look at the Wikipedia page for pattern hair loss, which I didn't get into at all. But yeah, playing in a band is fun, and it creates an interesting bond that I believe is based in the vibrations that you're sharing with someone else. It's also like a form of like, you know, the more time I've spent on music, I kind of just equate it to like a different craft. So if you look at like, I made the comparison to sports. So like learning a sport is basically just learning a craft. And when you sign up for a team, it's not as high stakes because you're just kind of competing to like, get to the goal of winning the game or whatever. Whereas like it's way more open ended when you join a band, because like there's no subscription or anything. It's just like full blown relationships with other people, plus add in like the soul vibration part of it. And then like you can do that in sports as well. You look at you look at the best players in each sport, and you can kind of like get a window into their personality. A lot of these guys are joyous not all of them, but some of them, as they play. So like everyone's feeding off the energy of them as they lead the team or whatever. But it's kind of different because in the ideal circumstance of a band, everyone's equal as well. So it's like, and then it's just way more open-ended. Like you can win the game, but when you write the song and you play it live, it's really like a pure expression, from within, I guess you could say. So I equate it more to, there are a lot of direct comparisons or parallels between sports and playing in a band, but the comparison I like to make is just creative writing. So writing a song is really not that much different than writing some sort of like poetry or a short essay or something. And you're doing like collaborative essay writing with people, and then like traveling around town trying to like hawk your essays at different people, like get a reaction from them, but you're just cranking up the volume on it. It's kind of like a ridiculous pursuit, which is why the conventional wisdom that playing in a band is one of the dumbest things you can ever do is true in a sense. But there's a lot more to say on this topic, but I'm going to cut off the stream there, and I'm thinking of more stuff. If you have any ideas, leave it in the comments. Thank you for tuning in.